bent. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the foe in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the foe in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. This is the show that values time and puts God first. Appreciate everybody for tuning in as always. I know we weren't live a lot last week, had some stuff going on, but we are back. We are ready to go. Let's get it started. It is the start of NFL free agency, and it's one of the most fun times to be doing this kind of stuff. Sports nerds like me, we live for shit like this, right? Like the NFL offseason, the NBA offseason. I know the NFL offseason is bigger because the NFL is bigger, but the reality is I love all off seasons. I love you guys have heard me say this since day one. I love optimism in sports. I love that fan bases, even if we're delusional. And let's start here. This is the best part about the offseason in any sport, is that even though we're delusional, and all fans are crazy, fans short for fanatic, all that stuff, you've heard it a million times. Even if we're all delusional and crazy, it's fun to think your team has a chance. Now, there's a team that I believe, this is now its second consecutive offseason where its fans feel like we have a chance, but for two very different reasons. So last year, the Chicago Bears, they draft Caleb Williams, they draft Odunze, they bring in Keenan Allen, they re-sign DJ Moore. It's skill position. It's, oh my gosh, we're going to be so explosive on offense. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to be creative. We're going to rewrite every Bears record in existence, mainly because if you look at most Chicago Bear records, they look like they were all set in 1965. Like, the franchise never had a 4,000-yard passer. This year, and that led to a lot of optimism last year. And that optimism came crashing down. The Bears did not have the season they wanted. Caleb did not have the season they wanted, even though they had all these guys. Again, Allen, Odunze, Moore. Was not the year they wanted. So they fire Matt Eberflus. They now bring in Ben Johnson. And with this offseason, again, Bears fans feel like, again, optimism heading into the season. Will's going to join us later in the show. He's got optimism. Bears fans are now going, well, this time we did it right. Instead of going and getting multiple wide receivers, we're going to go get multiple offensive linemen. We're going to get Jackson from the Rams. We're going to get Delvin from the Falcons. And we're going to get Thuney from the Chiefs. This is how you build a team. Now, I'm not somebody, I've said this very early on in my career of trying to do this. I believe the most important skill you can potentially do is shift the field in terms of either a dominant pass rusher who requires two people to block him or a dominant wide receiver who requires two people to cover him. And that's because when you shift the field, if you then have a competent head coach or OC or DC, you are now playing 10 on 9. And so I don't want to diminish the value of wide receivers, what they can bring to a team. But the Bears clearly saw last year, we went and got a bunch of skill guys. Did not work. Quarterback was running for his life. This was not sustainable. And so they went and did what you do. Everybody's going to make mistakes. But when you make a mistake, eat it, own it, then fix it as fast as you can. You got to own that you made the mistake. So we're not going after skill guys. We're going after all offensive line, all defensive line. And there's a chance they might even in the draft at 10, Will Campbell, a guy who was starting to slip on some draft boards because of stupid comments and the idea that his measurables are going to matter, not that he was one of the best offensive linemen in college football last year, if not the best. If he falls to you at 10, you've now remade 4 of your 5 offensive line, which was the worst part of your football team last year. So now you've remade your offensive line, which is the thing that made you go, okay, if you still believe Caleb is that guy, so I believe in the quarterback, I'm now going to believe in the head coach. I just have Ben Johnson now who's been hired. If I believe in all these things and my offensive line is going to keep me upright and I still have DJ Moore, I still have Odunze another year into the league, I still have Cole Kmet at tight end, I still have the belief that this defense, while they did not play up to what the standard they set 2 years ago after they got Sweat, I believe that defense, that top 10 potential, even maybe top 5 potential is still there. Ate the mistake, you owned it, you fixed it. And again, These are consecutive off seasons that they felt like they fixed it, or that they were going to run, or they not that they fixed it, but these are consecutive off seasons they felt great going into the regular season. Except last year didn't work, and so they have fixed the mistake. They are now correcting it. And it's easy to see. It's hard to see good to great. It's easy to see bad to good. What do I mean by that? Denver, I'll use an example because I paid the most attention to them. You saw the immediate difference, Nathaniel Hackett to Sean Payton. You saw it immediately. And even if there were skeptics, was Sean Payton still a great head coach, or was he a Drew Brees merchant? But you saw the immediate difference in how he handled things. Nathaniel Hackett gave into his quarterback, his star players, skill positions. Sean Payton came in and said his first two signings, both O-linemen. We're going to get Ben Powers from the Ravens, and we're going to get McGlinchey from the 49ers. And was already starting to overturn. He's like, look, there was something wrong. We're going to acknowledge it was wrong. Then we're going to fix it, and we're going to move on quickly. And that's what the Bears are doing. So the Bears so far have easily, in my opinion, my favorite offseason so far. Again, and it's totally different. You got the same result. You still got people optimistic. You still got people excited. You have your fans excited for this next season. Entirely different reasoning than they were excited for last year. You fixed it. Good job, Chicago. A team who's had a lot more success as of late, even though last season wasn't great for them, is the San Francisco 49ers. Now listen, the 49ers are in a tough spot. The 49ers, who have had one of the best rosters, you guys have heard me talk up and down about them over the last couple of years. 6-7 guys who are all pro level players. You have Trent Williams on the O-line, Kittle, Debo was an all-pro, Ayuk was great. You had Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Hufanga. Now, because you did not win a Super Bowl, because you ran into 15 in Kansas City multiple times, it is now time to pay your quarterback. And I've said multiple times, I don't know how I would handle Brock Purdy negotiations because I don't really know where I want to put him on the scale. I think Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. Brock Purdy has obviously shown you, when you have the requisite talent, he can get you as far as the Super Bowl, and maybe if he was playing any other quarterback besides 15, he would win you a Super Bowl. But now the Niners started off contract negotiations, said, hey, look, $45 million a year. It's a good number. I would say if you're Purdy, who you've never been able to cash out, and if you're the Niners, that's going to put him 10 to 15 million above like the true like top end quarterback contracts, and that's obviously going to get cheaper year after year. Dak's making 60. So it's going to be a good contract in 2 to 3 years, even if it hurts year one. But then, and now Purdy didn't accept that. And Tony and I were kind of talking about this on a group chat earlier this week. He's like, look, if I'm Brock Purdy, I'm not taking 45. I'm just not. I'm telling him, SMD, I've been to a Super Bowl. I have accomplished more than Trevor Lawrence. I have accomplished more than Dak Prescott. I deserve to get paid more than them. And if I was the 49ers, and I've said this multiple times, I would play, am I good enough to go, like, could I make anyone into Brock Purdy? This was the last pick in the draft. This was Mr. Irrelevant. I have a brilliant, in my opinion, brilliant offensive head coach who is going to be here for many, many years in Kyle Shanahan. And I believe that I can draft well enough John Lynch, who's been one of the better GMs in football. This combination is the actual key to our success, not the quarterback. I could replace him. Except now we're getting very telltale signs that I don't think Purdy's signing for 45. I don't think Purdy's going to sign for 50. I think Purdy is going to attempt to be the highest paid quarterback in the National Football League. And I think that's a mistake. I think paying him that amount of money is a mistake. But the reason why I believe this now is a lot more likely that he's going to get to that number versus the 45 they started at is because look at all the moves that they haven't been making. Hufanga, all-pro safety. Signs that, yes, he's been hurt, but signs a really good deal in Denver. 49ers don't want to pay for him. The 49ers feel like we know we have, if you feel like you're about to pay 60 for a quarterback, you're not bringing back Hufanga. Dre Greenlaw also goes and signs with Denver. Gonna pay 6 to a quarterback, can't do it. Backup offensive tackle goes to Kansas City. Like, Deebo Samuel gets traded. There's now rumors that Brandon Ayuk might be traded. This is how you start peeling those layers. When you pay a quarterback $60 million a year, then the only people you can guarantee to be on your team is him, Trent, Fred Warner, and even Nick Bosa is going to be here in another year. Can we continue to pay him? This is when it becomes a mistake to pay your quarterback, unless they are exactly, in today's NFL, if it's not Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar, and I know I said Burrow, I've got Burrow below Stafford, but because of age, that in terms of paying a contract top high-end money to, you can't pay $6 million unless it's one of those guys. If it's one of those guys, fine. You just do it. You just make it out. You just figure it out. You make it work. Boom. But to pay Brock Purdy, and I like Brock. I think Brock's a good quarterback. But I also know Brock has been the beneficiary of one of the best rosters in the NFL. Again, at their peak, this was 7, 8 all-pro players. Even their fullback. What do fullbacks make? Does anyone know what a fullback makes? They're releasing him. Everything the 49ers are doing is just screaming, we're going to have to pay a lot of money to this guy, and the people we're going to designate is Warner, Bosa, Ayuk, and Trent you probably hold on to just because of his age. I wouldn't do it again. If I'm the 49ers, I would have told Brock Purdy, you know what? I think you need us way more than we need you. So I'm going to continue with the super team and just let quarterback be quarterback. Does not look like that's the direction the 49ers are going. We'll see how it works out. Kyle Shanahan, I still think, is brilliant. We'll see how it works out. Man, there's a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of free agent moves. Excuse me. I love what the Broncos are doing so far early in free agency. You just talked about Greenlaw and Funga. There's a lot of moves. I don't quite get the DK Metcalf move. We'll talk about that later. But when we come back, the NBA team that everyone has fallen in love with, and we're going to see true NBA media in all of its glory over the next 2 weeks. This is HardFoul Radio. We will be back momentarily. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, as always. So, NBA media is constantly criticized and critiqued and everything under the sun because it should be for the most part. A lot of NBA media has fallen by the wayside because we have decided, or NBA media has decided, there's 3 or 4 interesting teams, there's 3 or 4 interesting players. Everybody else, even though Giannis and Dame and how they're actually playing together in Milwaukee this year is an interesting storyline, even though both Thompson twins, which we're going to get to later in the show, and Cade Cunningham, what they're doing in Detroit and Houston, respectively. Ime Udoka's coaching his ass off. A story like Chauncey Billups in Portland, who I know Portland's not relevant to the masses as a whole. Chauncey is coaching his ass off. He has gotten that team from basement level to competitive. There's a bunch of storylines that are happening in the NBA, but NBA media, for the most part, only wants to pay attention to a couple teams. We all know that. Been there, done that. We're going to do our best here to help add to the amount of storylines that exist in the NBA. One of the teams, though, that obviously gets talked about a lot is the Lakers. And the Lakers have had a great 2 to 3 week stretch, really the last month. Obviously acquiring Luka Doncic. They had on the 8-game win streak. They've been the number 1 defense in basketball for the past almost month and a half. Like, there's a lot of good things going on in Los Angeles right now. So I want to do what all small market fans do, which is just kind of take a little bit of the air out of Los Angeles. So, yes. Let's attack all 3. Let's attack the defense, let's attack the Luka perspective, and let's attack how great the Lakers quote unquote have been the last couple of weeks. Let's start with the defense. So, there is such a thing as, I get into conversation about this almost on a daily basis. Probability and stats and just the math of it all. Sometimes you just get on a lucky streak. It doesn't mean you're not doing your job. It doesn't mean you're not playing the right way. It doesn't mean you're not playing good defense or good offense. Sometimes there is stats to prove how the percentage of times that something will happen. And there was also numbers that'll prove how often you're going to go on streaks. Let's take this from if you ever gambled, if you've ever played blackjack at a casino, you could be a seasoned blackjack player, know all the rules, know all the signs, and you will sometimes just sit down at a table, however much money you got there, and you will just lose hand after hand after hand after hand because the dealer is they're just hitting, and the dealer's set to lock in they only can play a certain way, and they will just hit. If they got 15 showing, then they're going to hit a 6 and get 21. And, we've all been there, right? Anyone who gambles. That just can happen. It has nothing to do with how good or how great or if you know the rules. Sometimes there's just stats that show there is ebbs and flows to a lot of these things, even if they consistently happen at a certain percentage. Teams in the NBA, on average, shoot 36% from 3. The Lakers, and you saw this in the Nets game, over the last month and a half, teams are shooting under 30%. Well, that could just be their defense. Except, of note, they don't have a great perimeter defender. I know they've had really good team defense, but you look at those shots against the Nets, it was open threes, and in that Nets game, they were going down. Over the last month of span, or these last couple weeks when they had the number 1 defense in the NBA, teams are just missing open shots. Like, that's the reality of it. Teams are just missing open shots. And that's not trying to necessarily take anything away from them, but understand, and I think JJ does, which is to his credit, he talked about, like, look, we gave them open shots. They were hitting open shots. We can't do that. So he's aware of it, which is going to be good for them long term because he's not going to allow them to just rest on their laurels and say, oh, well, we were a great defensive team for this amount of time. No, he understands, look, if you let them shoot open shots, yes, they're going to miss X amount of them, but they're also going to hit X amount of them. We can't just rely on them missing open shots. Then let's go to Luka, Luka's had some good numbers as far as total stats, but look at his shooting percentage since he's been a Laker. He is still clearly trying to play himself into shape. He is not there physically, and that's fine. He's been hurt. He's got to play himself back into shape, but he is not. The Luka Doncic that the Lakers fans are going to fall in love with is still probably not going to show up until next season. If he shows up, he's in shape, He's the Luka of past. Right now, he's still returning himself in shape. He's coming off an injury. This is not going to be prime Luka Doncic probably at any point this year. And I know that doesn't sound fun because you just got this shiny new toy and you want him to go out there and you want to play with him. But this is not going to be the prime Luka Doncic that Lakers fans historically are going to fall in love with. So that's 2. And I think it's all going to capitalize on how great they've been the last couple of weeks. These next 10 games, and LeBron's out with an injury now. These next 10 games, there's multiple back-to-backs, and it's a really cramped part of the schedule because of, again, something they can't control. But the LA Wildfires and having to spread their schedule apart, they're playing multiple back-to-backs. There's multiple against Denver. There's multiple against Milwaukee. Again, Luka's not in great shape yet, so back-to-backs are going to be tougher. LeBron's going to be out. Some of these teams are just going to start hitting their three-point shots. I know the Lakers soared all the way up to number 2 in the West, but for every great run, there's going to come down. Basketball is a game of runs, not just in game, but in season. So as great as these last couple of weeks, I think the Lakers, they're the 3 seed now. Denver just overtook them for the 2. I think you could see them possibly. This has 3-7 written all over it, and that's with 3-6 continuing because they already lost to the Nets, and that'll drop them down to where they'll be in that 5-6. They'll be competing with. They'll be in between Houston and Golden State. So I know everyone's in love with the Lakers right now. I know everyone's in love with Luka right now. I know everyone's in love with the defense right now. But this has all the makings of you were riding high, and now we're going to start coming back down to earth. So I think the Lakers are still going to be fine. I don't think they're a serious threat to win it this year. Again, we'll see what LeBron looks like next year, which right now you got to give him the benefit of the doubt until Father Time actually starts fighting back. He's the best. And you'll see Luka fully healthy, engaged, and another year with JJ. I think next year there's a real argument the Lakers are a threat. I think this year it's still probably a little too late. Transitioning from that to not serious. You know we've got to attack the topics that exist in the sports universe, but they're just not that serious. And while other shows will make full segments out of them, we just have to kind of go, really? What are we doing? Number 1, Amon-Ra St. Brown on his podcast. He is pissed off because it seems like the Bears have all this money and they're signing all these guys. And he's like, man, it feels like they have unlimited money. Like, what's going on? And guess what, Amon-Ra St. Brown? That's what happens when your team, which you're upset that they don't have the money that the Bears have, your team has drafted well, your team has developed well, and they have paid their players well, yourself included. You got paid. Jared Goff's been paid. Penei Sewell's about to get paid. Aiden Hutchinson's about to get paid. You guys have already, you're in-house going to be spending all this money and or have already committed all this money. The Bears, on the other hand, have only truly committed to about 3 guys on their team, one of which their receiver. They have not had to pay a quarterback yet. They have not had to pay multiple offensive linemen yet. So yeah, excuse me, they do have money. They got a lot of money because they have not drafted as well as you. They have not been as productive as you. So there's a lot more money to go around. That's why the teams that normally have the most draft capital, or not so much draft capital, teams that normally have the most cap space in the NFL, and the Bears entered this season going they were number 6 in cap space, is because they're usually worse teams because they don't draft and develop as well as the good teams. You know who doesn't have a lot of cap space? The Lions. You guys, because you've been drafting and developing well. You know who doesn't have a lot of cap space? The Niners, because they've been drafting and developing well. They paid Warner, CMC, Nick Bosa, and like those teams always feel like when you're signing your own guys, it feels like got a bunch of money. The Bears haven't had their own guys to sign, so they're spending that on free agents. Now they're overpaying for them, but the idea that you're upset, and the idea that Amon-Ra St. Brown is upset, by the way, too, he's in division. He should be upset. You shouldn't like anything that your division rivals are doing. So, not serious. Excuse me. Michael Malone on the MVP. Look, and this was the topic on multiple shows today, and it was the whole conversation of, because Michael Malone came out yesterday and said, Jokic, if he didn't have the 3 MVPs, we would look at him differently because look at what he's doing. Look, I don't think that, me personally, I don't really care if you have one MVP, if you have 3 MVPs, if you are clearly the most valuable player on your team, and I do think Jokic is. I don't think he'll win, but I do think he is the most valuable player, mainly because I know Shai's really his only argument for they're both putting up great numbers. And Jokic's numbers are insane, but the argument in terms of valuable is Shai's team is really young. I think Shai's team is more talented than the Nuggets. I think he has more good players than the Nuggets. And because of that, I actually think Jokic is more valuable. But Michael Malone, it's always been this way. This is not a real story. This is not a serious take. Because Jokic has benefited from this. Again, last year, Luka, you could have made an argument, had better pure numbers, but Jokic still won MVP. Like, yeah, it's not a this is not serious. Excuse me. Dave Roberts contract extension. Now, this might seem a little weird. Why it's not serious is because look at the Dodgers, man. I think anyone could run the Dodgers right now. I think anyone could manage the Dodgers right now. They are clearly the most talented team in baseball. They're clearly the best team in baseball. Their payroll is insane. I think I could go manage the Dodgers. Like, you just kind of had to stand there. Like, Tony and I have this joke of, like, who's the Ryan Day in each professional sport league. Dave Robert is, I think Tony called him this on yesterday. Dave Robert is the Nick Sirianni of Ryan Days. When you are this talented, your team is this stacked, just don't mess it up. No one's expecting you to be crazy. No one's expecting you to be innovative. Just don't mess it up. That's all. So Dave Roberts in a contract extension. I don't think it's that serious. And last one for not serious. Shador critics, and I know we slammed you last week, and I'm gonna slam you again today. The idea of what Shador is being criticized for, I firmly believe is all because of who his dad is. I believe it is all due to, it's weird. Tony and I said this last week. They used to slam and criticize heavily black quarterbacks who ran too much. And Shador is now being criticized because he's a black quarterback that doesn't run enough. Like, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? Now, Shador is going to be the winner in this. Because Shador is probably going to be pushed down enough in certain draft circles because of bullshit narratives and things being said that he will probably actually end up going to a better team. But the critics of Shador Sanders, because of what there's like, look, he's accurate, he's an athlete, he comes from pedigree, he does everything that this kid next year, if we're being honest, fits a lot of the same boxes, comes from pedigree, he's a little outspoken, he's real accurate, but his last name is Manning, not Sanders. Just my take. When we come back, we're going to look into, it is Tuesday, a little old rewind of Team Tuesday when we're looking at the Broncos free agent moves. Before we get into hour 2, this is HardFoul Radio. We will be back momentarily. So the Broncos signed both Dre Greenlaw and Hufanga at safety, both former 49ers. And there's even potentially Evan Ingram might be signing. It looks like it's going down between the Broncos and the Chargers as far as where Ingram wants to play next year. I'm going to be quick here for a little quick Team Tuesday. I love both of these signings, by the way, because here's a philosophy that I have, and just humor me for a second. If you have, so quarterback independent, because if you have a great quarterback and you're going to sign a bunch of money anyway, cool. If you are going to be a well-run football team, in my opinion, I would, because resources are limited, because it's a salary cap league, I would rather pay and have excellent players on the side of the ball that my coach is least familiar with. So in Denver's case, Sean Payton, offensive head coach, I would rather pay and have Dre Greenlaw, Hufanga, Pat Surtain, Zach Allen, who was a free agent, Nick Bonito, who you're probably going to re-sign, Jonathan Allen. Like, I would rather invest more of my money and my resources into the defensive side of the ball, because if I believe in Sean Payton and what this offense can do and what he can do as a coach, then I expect him to elevate, as he did this last year, rookie Bo Nix, Troy Franklin, Cortland Sutton. Like, I probably don't want to invest. Like, yes, you want certain guys, you want an X amount of talent on both sides of the ball. That's obvious. But if I'm going to invest in free agency, I would rather be on the side of the ball that my coach is least familiar with. Like, elevate the young guys, draft your young guys, because that's what you should know. You should know what good offensive linemen look like. You're an offensive head coach. You should know what good receivers look like. You're an offensive head coach. You might not be as familiar with defensive guys. You might not know what it takes to, and not to say that it's impossible, but this is my feeling. Paid for Zach Allen. It's been great. You just went out and got Greenlaw and Hufanga. I think both have potential to be great. PS2 was a draft pick, but that was unique. You're going to have, again, you just re-signed DJ Jones, who was a free agent beforehand. You're going to potentially have to re-sign another guy, John Franklin Myers. Like, you have a lot of here. Just invest in free agency on the side of the ball your head coach doesn't work on. Now, the exception is probably offensive line to just start. Like, just get some good offensive linemen if you're going to have a young quarterback. This is similar to what I talked about Chicago to start the show. Chicago is getting offensive line, but then if Ben Johnson is who you think he can be, post this free agent class, the Bears need to start then the Bears go back to defense. You make sure you have a good O-line or O-line that is capable. You draft better on that side of the ball, because that's where your coaching staff are more predicated to know more. They should have a better understanding of. And the same goes to defensive guys. If you have a defensive head coach, go buy offensive players, because you should be able to elevate your defense. Robert Saleh is a great example. He's going to be back with the Niners this year. The Jets defense, now they had some high picks, but he was able to elevate their defense where they were a top 5 defense. And then once he was fired, they were down in the bottom half of the league. And that's with Sauce Gardner. That's with DJ Reed. That's with Quinnen Williams. That's with these guys who are really talented. If your head coach, the 49ers about to go through a rebuild. If I'm Kyle Shanahan, again, you got to pay your quarterback. Cool. I'm going to trust that I can understand, or that I do understand and can make offensive guys work better than I can defensive guys, so that everybody I'm getting rid of right now, I want to keep Warner. I want to keep Bosa. I want to keep, these guys of the corner that they just re-signed, because I don't know that side of the ball as well. And so that's where I want to have more of my resources, because I can flip wide receivers. I can flip tight ends. I can flip offensive linemen. I can flip running backs. I know that stuff. So if your head coach, whatever side of the ball he's on, it should be his job to elevate that side, even if it has less talent, versus go invest, spend money, spend your resources on the other side of the football. So I love what Denver's doing right now. I think their defense right now, I think Denver's defense should be top 2, top 3. There's realistically no weakness. They just led the NFL in sacks. They're bringing all their pass rushers back. Greenlaw in at linebacker. I love Alex Singleton, but Alex obviously has physical limitations. He's also coming off a torn ACL. And Hufanga, Jones, Pat Surtain, Riley Moss, Jaquan McMillan, great secondary. This should be a top 2, top 3 defense in the NFL, without a doubt. And you have Sean Payton working with year 2 Bo Nix, another year with Troy Franklin, another year with Cortland Sutton. Let him prove himself as the offensive guy. And we are back to start hour 2. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for tuning in as always. In the NBA, everybody puts up stats. Any good player puts up good stats. Any great player puts up great stats. And we've really, because of the emphasis on analytics and numbers and these guys who are MIT, Harvard, etc., who are really big into this, we can make the sport predictable, and we know who's better because of by what they average. We have almost lost this concept of what makes a winning player. Now, we acknowledge a winning player once they've already won, but getting to that point, I feel like we have a lot of disagreements. Let's put it that way. You know who a winning player is? Both of the Thompson twins. You know who's not a winning player? Shout out to his dad and what they've done. LaMelo Ball. Now, LaMelo is going to average. The Thompson twins will probably never average statistically what LaMelo does. They'll never be in that high 20s, almost 30 point a game. They'll never have his highlights. They'll never have his reel or his and one mixtape. But LaMelo's been in Charlotte for a couple years now. And Charlotte is who it's consistently been, which is a bad team, a lottery team, not winning basketball. And that's because LaMelo takes a lot of shots, especially a lot of threes. And while he's a streaky shooter, he is not a great shooter. The Thompson twins fit into both of their programs. They play defense. They hustle. They can do a little bit of everything: score, rebound, pass. They're winning players. Look at what their programs have done. Again, Charlotte, LaMelo's been there multiple years. Still not good. Amen Thompson, the Thompson twins, Detroit, look where Detroit is versus where they've been. And that's also a lot due to Cade Cunningham, who, can we talk about Cade Cunningham for the love of... Look where the Pistons have been since Blake Griffin was there. Think about that. Think of where the Pistons have been since Blake Griffin. Under 500, under 500, under 500, under 500. I think 1 year they've been in the play-in since Blake. That's just the plan, not even the playoffs. Cade is there now, and Cade, Thompson, what they're doing, even Isaiah Stewart, who his original claim to fame was the big steam, like, you know, go run at LeBron, act crazy, that whole thing that happened during the game. He is now a part of this team. He plays defense, he rebounds, he's an actual serviceable big. What they're doing in Detroit, changing the culture. The Pistons are above 500. The Pistons are going to be a for sure playoff team. Again, we love, and I do too, we love Paulo. Paulo's great. Paulo's gotten young LeBron comps. The Magic's offense is just hard to watch. And their regression, yes, they're a playoff team last year, but they have now regressed. Cade got to the league, was good immediately. He was good, he made others good, and now his team is good. And it's not like they have this huge inflection of talent. It's him, it's Thompson, and the guys Detroit has had. But they now have a winning culture. They're getting coached. Cade's probably never going to have LaMelo's stat line. And LaMelo was number one voted all-star by the fans because fans love highlights, fans love exciting players, and LaMelo is that in spades. But he's not a winning player. Again, go over to Houston. Myself included, a lot of us, we mocked what Houston did a few years ago. Giving Dylan Brooks a lot of money, giving Fred VanVleet a lot of money. They drafted the other Thompson, drafted him in. Jalen Green, who has more stories off the court than on the court. It felt like, what are we doing? But then they brought in Ime Udoka, serious coach, serious culture. Dylan Brooks, we can say what we want about some of his things, feeling like they're an act or they're weird or they're stupid even. But winning player Dylan Brooks came from Memphis. Winning player Fred VanVleet came from Toronto. Winning player rookie draft Thompson. Jalen Green, winning coach who situation off the court, but Ime Udoka was outright a winner when he was with Boston. These are winning players, winning mentalities. These are the kind of stories, by the way, when we talk about how the NBA media has fallen off. These are the kind of stories that should be discussed. Houston is a real story. They're a top 5 seed in the West. And they're not that far removed from when they originally had to trade James and start this whole rebuild. Multiple teams have had to rebuild and never built themselves back up to even where Houston is at already. Detroit had to tear everything down, rebuild. Not many teams are even at, since they've had to start the rebuild, where Detroit's at. Cade Cunningham is a winning player, a real story in the NBA. Another team to look out for, and we're gonna be discussing this all throughout the weeks. Another team to look out for, go look at what Chauncey's doing in Portland. Look at where they started. Look at where they are now. Culture, environment, winning players. Chauncey is a coach is doing this. Chauncey as a player is one of the best examples. He was never the most talented. He was never the biggest highlight reel. But his teams always won, and that's not an accident. Let's start giving credit to guys that are winning players. You know, Luka's with LA now. He's one of the best players in the league. And I understand he's coming off a finals appearance. But 2 years ago, the Mavs missed the playoffs entirely. That means playoffs and play-in. And Luka's a 30-point per night guy. Luka's a highlight reel. Everything nice you can say about him. They missed the playoffs 2 years ago in his prime? Just saying. Let's start giving some more credit to guys that are just winning players. Can we do that? And with that, we are joined, as always, on Tuesday. Will is in the building, standing a nice 6'3", 221 pounds. How we feeling today?
Good, man. I'm good. Measurements still ain't perfect, but yeah, you working in the right direction.
We gonna get there one day. So I started the show off with I like a lot about what the Bears are doing this offseason. You could tell there's a clear look. we went out, got a bunch of receivers, skill positions. That didn't work because regardless of how nice your skill positions are, if Caleb's getting killed, he's getting rushed. It don't matter how nice you think he is, he's gonna be able to have time. So you can see the clear direction they're going. You get Thuney at guard, you get Delvin at center, and then Jackson from the Rams also at guard. Now, for for your preference, if you were the GM, are you doubling down on this again in the drafts? Like, if you have a chance at 10 to take one of the top offensive linemen, are you redoing 4/5 of your O line in one offseason? Or do you think that or guard, center, guard is enough?
If Campbell is there at 10, you got to take him. And
I feel that.
I think Braxton Jones is good enough to where you can flip him for a draft pick.
That's valid.
You know, whether you get another pick in this draft or a future pick.
No, that's
valid.
It's
a few players that I like though that I, you know, and of course, you know, I'm not big into college. Of course, I think neither one of us is as big into it as Tony is, but I think I'm not even as big into it as you are, except like when draft time comes around, I kind of start looking at the top names, and then whoever they start talking about is likely for the Bears to be able to get. So it's a few names that I may have already knew throughout the college football season, but it's also just some guys who I've just looked into a little bit and I like. So, I mean, Will Campbell is one of them. I like Mason Graham a lot. I don't know.
If he falls to 10, that's a steal. He falls to 10, that's a steal. We were just talking about him yesterday. Mason Graham is a monster.
That'll make up for Jalen Carter, who got drafted who got drafted at 10.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. We'll start there. Is if you don't get, let's say Campbell's either Campbell's off the board or both the top 2 linemen are off the board. So there's no one that the Bears feel like should be at 10. What's the next direction? So you obviously said Mason Graham to start. Who's another couple players you're looking at for the Bears?
So let me pull up the draftees real quick.
Mm-hmm.
But so it's a few which, I mean, as far as draft position and whether they were being drafted in certain positions, I don't know. Like I said, I don't watch a whole lot, but what is it? James Pierce Jr.
Yeah.
I like him from what I've seen. I wouldn't be mad. Like, it's a lot of Bears fans who don't want it. I wouldn't be mad at Ashton Jeanty at 10 if we can't get any, if we don't get any other offensive linemen.
I guess gives you a running game to rely on.
I think Tony mentioned to me in the group chat, Kelvin Banks Jr. I looked at some of his stuff. He looked pretty good. Mike Green, I watched some of his stuff. So it's a few guys like just pretty much all offensive line or defensive line that I was kind of looking at though.
No, that's valid. It's nice when you see this is how you can tell, and like as fans, like we're always gonna roll with our team to a certain level. You just like you give them the just blanket, all right, cool, we're rolling with this season. But when you come off a bad season, and again, I had some questions about Ben Johnson as far as the way he was kind of talking crazy at the owners' meetings or the combine. But you can see when it's like when you transition from like bad coaching staff to good coaching staff or bad general manager, good general manager, you see that shit almost instantly. Like it just happened with Denver, whereas like hey, you saw what I blanked my man's name, Nathaniel Hackett. You saw Nathaniel Hackett to Sean Payton. And even if you weren't like, oh, Sean's like the greatest coach ever, it was a clear difference immediately. Like Nathaniel Hackett was a dumpster fire, and now you're seeing this. And I feel like that's happening with Chicago right now, where you got to see like, all right, Matt Eberflus, you believed in, said, all right, cool, maybe this could work, but you just see even the difference of philosophy, how the organization's moving. And like even Ryan Pace, I don't remember the GM's name before him. Like Ryan Pace, or I guess I'll ask this. Let me rephrase it this way, because Ryan Pace, I've heard some conflicting things about. Do you think Ryan Pace is a good GM, or do you think he's getting a lot off of the trade with the Panthers? Like, is that one fleece in the Panthers? Is that kind of like overshadowing? Is like, all right, is bro good at his job, or did he like do one like crazy good thing?
I won't say he only did one. Like I would say he's okay. Like I don't think he did just one crazy good thing, because under Ryan Pace we still had some decent years. I think the Bears just And I don't know if that was a GM thing. I don't know if that was an ownership thing, and maybe it took a while for them to kind of realize that they needed to shift with the rest of the league and not be so defense centric. Like, you still want to have a good defense, put a great defense out on the field, but you have to have a high powered offense to win in this league today.
No,
It's not no more like, the best defense in the league that's not going to be enough to just get you there without a good offense also. So I won't say he was bad, but I'll say maybe they just didn't adjust with the times. Like as the league started to shift, they didn't.
No, that's valid. Do you now that it's been a couple days, obviously some of these guys are already signed prior to we recorded on Sunday, but now Delvin, who wasn't signed by the time we recorded Sunday morning, but he got signed later that day. Where in your mind do the Bears sit inside that division? And again, I said this on Sunday, that division's crazy. It's like you could be a good team and still finish third or fourth, because that division had two teams in 14 games last year. So where are you feeling about them as far as starting this, if as everything is currently?
It's honestly tough to say. It's honestly tough to say because of because of the other changes that have kind of went on in the division. The Lions losing Ben Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
That's a thing. Sam Darnold is gone. Whatever.
that one's yeah, he's gone. He did 4,000 yards. Can't take that away from him, I guess.
I think so. I'll say I think we can. Not saying that this is where we finish, but I think we could at least be second in the division. And like I said, not saying because it is going to be tough no matter what. Like I mean, you still got the Packers, you got the Vikings, you got the Lions. Two of them were two of the top teams last year. It's all like you to good.
Mm-hmm.
I think talent wise, I mean, and just maybe seeing how Ben Johnson is able to put everything together, I think we could finish at least second in the division. Now, if we were to finish last and still have, I think, like I said on Sunday, if we were to still go like 10-7,
yeah,
I don't think that's a bad season. That's still a big improvement over last year.
No,
but I think we can. I think that's like the minimum. I think 10-7 is like low end of what the Bears could do, but it's also the first season under a new head coach. So, you saying the Lions 2 years ago versus how they were this year.
Yeah.
So it does take time to kind of cook all of this up.
No, that's a fact. But again, I like a lot of what the Bears have done this offseason. I think right now, I'm biased. The Bears have probably had, I'm going to say so far, the Bears have probably had the best offseason as far as addressing specifically, like, there's teams that have, like, I think the Patriots have had a good offseason so far, but the Patriots are working from a different space. They're just trying to get good players on their team. And so I think they got 5 or 6 starters, but the Bears clearly had 2 major issues, which is O-line. I don't think their D-line was a major issue, but O-line specifically was a big issue, like keeping Caleb upright. Because if you believe Caleb is that guy, then you got him. Again, Keenan Allen probably is not going to re-sign, but you still got Adunze, you still got Moore, you still got Cole Kmet at tight end. Like, he's got enough weapons that if he's upright, like, this should work.
And I mean, I think, which I don't know what Ben Johnson, what the Bears are going to do as far as filling the receiver holes. Like, I mean, there's still a few other veterans that may be available that we can go and grab, but I also think a guy like Tyler Scott may be able to get a chance at that wide receiver 3 spot and see what he can do as far as playmaking and things like that.
Yeah.
I know Ben Johnson, he liked to have like a speedy receiver on the team that can kind of blow the top off the defense and things like that. So we'll see.
Yeah, you like O-lineman that can pass. Ben Johnson does a lot of wild shit when he does play calls.
I told you that was all him. He was auditioning for a role. He was putting his bid in for the job. I think I said that when we were recording that day, or I think we were in the group chat talking about him running the trick play against the Bears or something. I said, yeah, this is him. He put his bid in for a job right now.
He's letting y'all know, like, I could change your life.
He said, this is what I can do.
Oh man. Going over to the NBA real quick. So obviously, do you buy, I guess, what's your position on the whole right now MVP? It's Jokic, SGA. what's your personal position on like, oh, we just tired of giving this one dude MVPs? Jokic already has 3. SGA doesn't have any yet. What's your opinion on like, oh, we just can't give him MVP again because he already got some?
I don't think that should be a thing. And I'm not the biggest on either of these two guys. Like, of course, I'll acknowledge both of them as being really good players, great NBA players. But I think as long as that's who deserves it, whoever deserves it should get it every time. And sometimes that may be the same player. Now, that's not me saying that I don't believe Shea deserves it, because I guess it's all about whether you feel like it's a close race or not.
Do you feel like it's close?
Yes.
If you had to vote today, who you going with?
Whoever's team was better. If in a close race, so because it's close, so not the old best player on the best team thing, but even if OKC wasn't the best team, but if these were the two front runners and OKC was ahead of Denver, and I feel like it's neck and neck, I would give the edge to the person who is having better team success.
Okay. So by that logic then, so you don't think then, because the other guy that would be in contention is, you don't think either Donovan Mitchell or Jason Tatum is in the conversation then? Because those would be the two other best teams. Do you feel like either of those guys would be close to what? Because statistically, no one's really close to Jokic right now. Except you could make an argument for Giannis. And like that's the closest we got. Like Jokic is doing stuff. Jokic is doing damn near 30, 13, and 10 as a center, which is insane.
I think the narrative around Tatum doesn't allow him to be in these conversations. And not like him as a player, but around the Celtics as a team. Like I think everybody views that he has too good of a team.
No, that's valid. And that's hurt guys in the past. So like I'm not so that's the one like old, I guess, the stereotype or philosophy of voting that I kind of do agree with. Like we all kind of acknowledge Steph had won an MVP, was a unanimous MVP, and then when him and KD got together, it's like, all right, y'all both kind of going to take away votes from each other because you're clearly playing with another all-time great player. Same thing happened with LeBron and Wade when they was in Miami. So I'm kind of in line with that. Which is why
but I don't think that applies to like Tatum and the Celtics though. He doesn't have a Wade or a Kevin Durant.
Jaylen Brown
is a really good player,
man.
Jaylen Brown is a great player. I like Jaylen Brown is one of my favorite players in the league. So both of them. I actually I like the Celtics though. Like I like the Celtics as a team. Like it's I feel like I've always, even though I wouldn't say I'm a Celtics fan, I've always said like I like the Celtics especially since they had both of them. But and unfortunately, I guess having a good team will get held against him because I think Jason Tatum is one of the best players in the league. I think
agreed.
Probably if I'm not counting the older guys, Steph, LeBron, or whatever, and even if I'm counting, if I'm being unbiased, Tatum is top 5 for sure, maybe top 4.
Yeah, I think he's better. It's weird, but he is better right now than the 3 old guys like Steph, KD, Bron, and they're still great, and that's dope, and they're probably still top 10. But Tatum, you're right, I think is closer to that top 5 at worst case 6 argument.
And I think if Tatum was in a situation where he didn't have like Tatum could probably average 35 points a game if he didn't have Jaylen Brown and yeah. So it's valid. And it's unfortunately, you get penalized for that, as far as where people view you, because they say, oh, look at what what SGA is doing, or look at what Jokic is doing. And Jokic, his numbers are his numbers. I think Jokic get a lot of extras because of the triple doubles and all of that stuff. So it's not even necessarily the points that he's putting up, is just the way that he gets his teammates involved.
No, that's fair. And I think personally, out of all those teams, I think Jokic has the worst supporting cast. Aaron Gordon's a good player. I don't think Aaron Gordon's a great player. Michael Porter Jr. I think is incredibly talented, but he's also really streaky still. And Jamal Murray, for as great as like he's a champion, he's had these great playoff performances, but he's still, even in my mind, like if he's not like it's kind of a joke, but it feels real. Like Jamal Murray against the Lakers, he Michael Jordan 2.0. Jamal Murray versus everybody else is kind of like he's just a good guard. OKC, I know they're young. OKC might have the best roster just in terms of talent in the league. Like I know they're all crazy young, so no one really wants to put them there yet. But if you go, and I know Chet's missed some time too, but like you get Chet, you get both the Williams, their bench is crazy deep. Like OKC has a lot of talent. My bias probably comes from, if I were to say like the deciding factor is, I just don't, and I've said this a bunch, I just don't like the way SGA plays. And there's something to like anytime you see, and this is an unfair bias because people keep showing, I keep seeing stat lines, people keep saying like, oh, y'all call SGA free throw merchant, but like they show like Mike's free throws attempts or Kobe's free throw attempts, and I'm like, I get it. I think it looks different, but when Jokic barely gets to the line. And so for me, Jokic feels more dominant on the court because a lot of his points are run out of an offense, which he is the offense for the Nuggets. It feels like he's more playing the game of basketball versus SGA. Even the game against the Nuggets, like bro's jumping. He did a step back and then like jumped in and like did some fucking weird ass face in the middle of his jump shot to try to get a foul call. And I'm like, I'm never going to really support that kind of player for MVP. I said this, this is my James Harden beef. I can't get behind it personally. Is Tatum ever going to win an MVP?
I don't think so. But like real quick, like I think one of the interesting things about Jokic is that I think, you had where do they sit in the standings? Do we know?
I think they're the 2 seed now because the Lakers lost last night.
Yeah,
so, but it's like a game.
42 and 23.
Yeah, there's
2 games. So the Lakers are 2 games behind them. The Lakers are 40 and 23. And I mean, like I said, Jokic is definitely a great player. I think he gets a lot more leeway because they want a ring, because he has a ring.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I think if it's any other player that's putting up these numbers and not winning championships, like at some point you call them empty calories at some, regardless of where the team finishing. But if it don't equate to champ, and I mean, even when you look at the title that they did win and who they played against, I think
that's
like how do you really even like compare to other teams and who they won against? Like how does that stack up against some of the titles that were won before and after?
No, that's fair. That's Giannis is kind of going under the radar, and I think some of that is because since he has one, even though Giannis, like if Giannis didn't have a title and was doing this, it would make a lot more sense to ignore him because it's like, all right, whatever. Like you get 30 points, you run, you dunk, but like we know that shit don't work in the playoffs. Build a wall, blah blah blah. But because he has a title, Jokic has a title, it's the difference between them and Embiid. Like all 3 of them could put up. I know Embiid's hurt, but like when they're all healthy, like they're all put up 30 plus. They're doing Jokic is doing the triple doubles, Giannis is scoring in the paint, and Embiid's going crazy in the post. Like, but because Embiid doesn't have a ring, it's easier to be like, nah, this shit don't work.
And I think, I think that's the thing with Jokic too. I think he gets a lot of like, and deservingly so. Like, I'm not ever the type to say like a championship don't count and try to diminish the championship, but I also think like he's putting up great numbers, but for a long time it was always the best player on the best team. And like I said, with these two is like which I don't know what their head-to-head record is so far this season. I don't know how many times they actually matched up.
So they just did the back-to-back. They went 1-1.
Yeah, so I don't know how many times they actually matched up, but like I said, as of right now, I would go SGA. And I mean, it's not like the Nuggets are going to catch them. They're like 10 games behind them.
No, OKC's running away with it. OKC is fucking running away with it.
And I mean, and then like as the Cavs, like even with the Cavs, I think Donovan Mitchell, and I like Donovan Mitchell too. I think he's a really good player. I think he may be in a similar system or in a similar situation as Jason Tatum. because of the talent around him between like Evan Mobley, Darius Garland is pretty good. Who did they just get? DeAndre Hunter.
Yeah.
So I think with the talent around him, I think that's kind of one of those things that always kind of get him diminished also. And I don't even know if I feel like he's an MVP caliber player, but I do think Donovan Mitchell is really good.
Yeah. And the Cavs are gonna win. They're on pace to win like 68 games. Like that's
they got 54
votes.
wins. They got 54 wins right now.
Like you will get some votes because even if we probably all don't look at Mitchell as the same kind of players like Tatum, Jokic, Embiid, SGA even potentially, but like, bro, you want a 65 plus win team, like you can some MVP votes.
Not even just that, but I mean he's done it consistently. Like I mean Utah was good when he was there. So like
he's in the
he's gonna be like a DeMar DeRozan. He's gonna be like one of those guys who are just like you know he's gonna get you buckets, and that's not like a slight at DeMar DeRozan. I know we used to kind of give DeMar shit like back in the day, but I think just when you look back on kind of what he's been able to do throughout his career, he definitely had a really good career, and I think Donovan Mitchell is gonna maybe be viewed like in that light.
No, as well. Hey, DeMar gets Michael Jordan comps,
and I was gonna say that's not a bad like. As a player, that's not a bad light to be viewed in, and fans may think it's a slight, but that's because fans are fans.
Fans are stupid. Last question here before we get you out is, and we kind of already addressed it a little bit, is I guess this iteration of Tatum, is it possible to win an MVP? Obviously, in like 4 or 5 years, because Kristaps is probably close to the end of his career because he's had injuries. I think he's 30 now. Drew Holiday's obviously older. So the next iteration of the Celtics, there's obviously going to be opportunity for Tatum to win MVP because he's going to be viewed as more important. There's going to be less talent on the roster. Do you think it's possible in this next, let's say, this year he's probably already out of it, the next 2 to 3 years while they have this core, do you think it's going to be possible for Tatum to get an MVP?
I think so. I just don't know, like, because it's not even me saying no doesn't mean I don't think he's MVP worthy, but I mean, like, just even looking at the stats, I mean, 27.2 points, 8.9 rebounds, 5.8 assists, like, those are great numbers. I don't know if the people who vote on those things will give it to him. Can he? Yes.
The Celtics would have to win. I feel like for Tatum to get MVP, I think the numbers could be that, but they'd have to win 70 games. Like you would have to be something during, like far and away the best team in the league, dominate. Because last year
they gotta go 73-10.
Yeah, like last year they were crazy. And like they were setting all kinds of records. They had the biggest plus minus, and like they were killing teams by well over double digits. And like that's still, and he was never talked about as an MVP.
But that's why it's interesting, because it's like when Steph and the Warriors did that, when they were blowing everybody out and killing, and Steph was winning MVP and not even playing fourth quarter. So it's like,
yeah, no, that's the thing. You gotta get into that.
But then it's like, Steph was breaking records and setting records and all of those things in the midst of doing it. So it's like when you don't have kind of some of those narratives around you, it's easy for people to not pay as much attention to it.
Hey, through age 28, and now this stat is a bunch of bullshit, and y'all gonna keep doing this because, reminder, Steph spent a large amount of the early part of his career injured. Career threes made. Jason Tatum has made more career threes through age 28 than Steph Curry did. Mm-hmm. So take that what you will. Now, Jason Tatum only played 1 year at college. Steph played 3. Steph spent the first 5 years career hard as hell. But through age 28, most threes ever made, Jason Tatum. So shout out to him.
Steph is gonna be one of those players where they're gonna say like his peak was about as high as anybody's, though. That's gonna be the difference when you talk, like, because when Steph finishes his career, his numbers are not going to be like that great on paper when you look at like total points and like his total career numbers, but you're going to look at his peak years and it's going to be like, yeah, his peak was just as high as about anybody's.
Yeah.
And
No,
I mean,
Steph
he got the accolades already: 2 MVPs, 4 finals MVP. What, one Western Conference MVP?
I think, yeah, that was the first year they started doing that shit. Yeah.
Yeah, the year when they won.
Yeah. So, no, Steph is the number that works for Steph is because he just absolutely revolutionized three point shot. Like he's gonna. There's not a lot of records like when they say like, oh, records that'll never be broken. We haven't necessarily lived through a lot of those because most of those were set back when like they were damn near like different sports. Like most points in the game, like seeing it, like living through 81 was crazy. We'll probably never see someone get 100. Even with the 3 point shot being is what it is. Steph, when he retires, his all-time threes made is probably gonna be the nobody's touching this. Cause it's realistically not close. Cause the only dudes that were close are Harden and Clay. And Clay's much closer to the end of his career than any of them. Harden's still playing well, but like Steph is still getting you 24, 25 a night, still making several threes now. Like he's gonna be by far and away. I don't think that was the one more underrated things about Steph is how early in his career he actually passed up Ray Allen. Like to think about that now, like he's had Ray almost passed up for a decade. Like
No, for sure.
that's
What year
insane.
did he pass Ray Allen?
20,
15, 16?
I think he might have been 14. Like it was he. Let's see. When did Steph become the all-time 3-point leader? Let's see. When did Steph become the all-time 3-point record? Here we go. Okay, I'm bugging. In
4 years ago. So that's
2021.
Yeah, so that's just 4 years ago.
Yeah. But he's still, if he plays for 2 or
Well,
3
no,
more
is
years.
that when he became the all-time three? Because I say he's set to become the first player to hit 4,000 threes, which he may have hit that already too, right?
I think he's 2 triple shy. This is as of when's this article written?
So he was the first player to reach 3,000 career 3-pointers. And James Harden has hit that now.
Games with 5 3-point shots. Steph Curry 388. Second is James Harden at 201.
What
games,
is it? Oh, most games with 5.
Yeah, games with 5. Steph's at 388.
Games with 10. Steph is at 26. Clay is at 9.
Like, hey, shout out to
And then
J.R.
when you look
Smith.
at the rest of the list, J.R. Smith, Zach LaVine.
Hey, yo. Nah, you ain't gonna see another Steph Curry. Like that's
See, but I think, and it's funny now, like even watching them, because with them having Buddy Hield now, and it was like, yeah, Buddy Hield is like a good shooter, but it's like I think Buddy Hield shows them on a regular basis, like how important IQ is.
Hey man, look, what they say, what the fuck is it? What's the car they say look like a phantom till a phantom roll up?
Yeah, they say the Chrysler 300 look like a Bentley till a Bentley pull up.
Yeah, like, bro, like, yeah, and Buddy Hield's a great shooter. Like, no disrespect to Buddy Hield, great shooter. You just 30s on a different level, man. And I appreciate you as always, bro. Hey, don't forget you can hear more Will on Group Chat podcast dropping every Sunday. And appreciate you stopping by today, man.
Yeah.
Man, it's always good to have Will on. It's always good to have Tony on. Any of the people you see here on the network, appreciate them always. I'll be real. Had one more thing to talk about. We're gonna have to push it tomorrow. Daylight saving is kicking my ass, so we're gonna get a little bit of rest. We got some editing to do afterwards. Don't forget to go check out the YouTube channels for all three. All 3 shows are on different YouTube channels. Please keep that in mind. HardFoul Network, A&M, and Group Chat all have their own different YouTube channels. Please go check them out. Don't forget to also